Hi, this is Dovid Orlofsky, and welcome to the special coronavirus edition of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. As you can see, we don't have any audience because we are practicing social distancing. And that's why I'm not even in the official Rabbi Orlofsky studio. I am operating out of a undisclosed location where I know that I will be protected. So it's interesting. I received a number of emails that said, thank you so much for not talking about coronavirus. Because everywhere we look, the only thing anyone seems to be talking about is coronavirus, and it's just depressing and tedious. Yeah. However, I did receive a number of comments on my videos and a number of emails that say, "Why are you the only one not talking about it?" Now, that to me is not such a kasha. Yeah. I remember the first time I was asked to speak at the major Shmir Saloshin event for women in Binyanei U'ma. I was told to speak for 35 to 40 minutes. And evidently every speaker was told that. The first one spoke for an hour. The second one spoke for an hour and 15 minutes. And I spoke for 37 minutes. And everyone asked me afterwards, why did you speak so short? And I said, I didn't. Everyone else spoke so long. So when you say, why are you the only one not talking about it? Because, look, let's be very frank. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a posek. Yeah, people can debate, what different poskim are saying, what the rabbanim are saying. I am not in a position. So why am I saying anything? Reminds me of a story. Rabbi Mordechai Becher, he says he was on a plane, and it was an El Al flight, and it was a snowstorm. And everybody was on the plane, and they were obviously waiting for the snow to let up so they could take off, but they were sitting on the runway for a very long time, and people were getting agitated. He says, I wasn't. I was sitting in business class, and they kept giving me free drinks, so I was fine. But eventually, the pilot gets on the intercom, and he says, I have been told that you want to hear my voice. Here I am. There's a lot of snow. And that was it. So I don't know why I need to say anything, because I really think that everybody has talked this thing, I don't want to say to death, but certainly ad nauseum. Yeah. So I mentioned this to one person, and I said, "Listen, why should I speak about it? I'm not qualified to speak about it." And the person said, quite correctly, "That doesn't stop you from talking about everything else that you're not qualified to talk about." I had to say the man had a good point. So the one reason I felt like, what am I going to talk about this for, is because what do I have to add to it? In fact, my last podcast, which was giving my cholent recipe and reflections generally on cholent, I received a couple of replies that said, I'm so glad that when everyone else is talking about all these heavy subjects, you're talking about something lighter. Now, I wasn't. I was talking about cholent, and that's very heavy. I don't know what they mean. You know what I'm saying? Compared to pandemic, yeah, which is certainly the most frightening of the demics. There's an epidemic, and there's endemic, and there's I don't know what other demics there are, but certainly pandemic. Whenever you hear pandemic, that certainly gives everybody a fright. So that's one reason I was hesitant to speak about the topic. Here's the other one. I'm not going to mention the name. I'm sorry if I'm giving away too much information, but Rabbi Brown, who was a close Talmud of Moshe Shapiro, I was not. I had the schus to sit in a number of his shiurim for years, but neither he nor I would ever call me a close Talmud. He said as much to me once. But anyway, so Rabbi Brown is, and there was a notable personality in the frum world, a very chashuv person who died, and everybody was speaking about him, and Reb Moshe Shapiro was notably not speaking about it. So Rabbi Brown said, "How come the Rav is not speaking about it?" He says, "Because otherwise I'd have to tell the truth." I said, "What's the truth?" The truth is that he was acting irresponsibly. I don't want to go into too many details because I don't want anyone to figure out who I'm talking about. But he felt that he acted in an irresponsible way, and that's the reason that he died. And you remember he said, whatever it was that this fellow did that he thought was irresponsible, he said to Rabbi Brown, he says, "Ten li yad, give me your hand and promise me that you're not going to do this." And he said to me, I have to tell you, as the years went by, it was a very difficult thing for me to keep, but I had promised with Moshe that I would not fall into the mistake that this person did. But you understand that when a very important person who's done a lot of good work, somebody gets up and says he as far as I'm concerned, he took his own life by acting irresponsibly, nobody wants to hear that. Nobody wants to hear that. There's an old quote. I don't know the source of it. I'm sure my fact checkers out there will give me the correct source. But not everything that you think should be said. Not everything that you say should be written, and not everything that you write should be published. I remember there was a story with Abraham Lincoln where the Battle of Gettysburg, which was the worst battle in all of North America, in the history of North America, over 50,000 casualties. And afterwards, Robert E. Lee's army was badly beaten, and he was retreating south, because that was the high water mark of the Civil War. It's as far north as they got, was Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And as he was turning, because there was a heavy rain, the river was swollen, he couldn't get across. So if General Meade had marshaled his forces and turned around and attacked him, he could have ended the Civil War in July of 1863. As it is, it continued until April of 1865. And Abraham Lincoln wrote a scathing letter to Meade, telling him how he's prolonged the war and the lives that'll be lost now because of that decision. And how did General Meade respond? He didn't. He never got the letter. Because Abraham Lincoln, when he would write an important letter, would put it into his drawer for I don't know how long before he would send them. That was his general practice. Because he might have had a change of heart. And he decided, with everything that was going on, for me to start second guessing what was going on in the battlefield is not going to help anyway. So he decided not to send it. Not everything that's written should be published. That's one of the terrible things about email, is that you write something, very often it comes out like a hostage note. There's no punctuation, no word capitalization, It's basically leave the money in an unmarked tree in New Jersey, but and they right away push the send button, and you have to ask yourself whether or not it's worthwhile, whether anything positive is being done by sending that. But people don't give themselves time to think. People react. So I have thoughts on the coronavirus and everything that's going on. And I'm hesitant to share them because like I say, I'm not a poisek and I'm not a medical professional. I'm just a person, who with one of the characters who sits in the back and fetches. That's what I do. It's kind of defines who I am as a person. So so I have my own thoughts on the matter. I've had them from the beginning. Excuse me. Being locked up gets to you. Anyway, I've had them since the beginning, and I've tried to share them. I have tried not to share them, but when pressed, I do end up sharing them. And you understand, since I have been asked to speak about it, take what I'm going to say with a very large grain of salt. The coronavirus is a flu. It is apparently more contagious than the average flu. But at the end of the day, it's a flu. Every year, a certain percentage of the population dies from the flu. It's a terrible thing. Now, my grandfather got sick and died when my mother was a teenager. It's a terrible thing, 100%. And yet, we've never seen fit to close down the entire world. And I'm talking about literally closing down the entire world. I'm here in Eretz Yisrael. Every yeshiva and seminary was closed. The boys and girls were scrambling to be able to get flights to run back to America so they can stay in their house. I have a friend of mine who lost his daughter. He's saying Kaddish. He says, I can't find the minyan. I can't say Kaddish for my daughter. Can you find the minyan and say Kaddish? What an amazing thing. Just close down everything. So they say, well, there's a death rate. Okay, let's be fair. And I'm not a medical professional. I just listen to what everybody is saying. And I'm dumbfounded. I just can't understand it. Because everybody I listen to says the same thing over and over again. The problem is we just don't know. We don't know if you catch it, how serious it's going to be. We don't know if you catch it, if it's going to, if when you get immunity, if the immunity is going to last. We just don't know. On a suffix, you close down the whole world? I can't speak for everybody here. If you're wealthy, let's talk. But if you're not, if you're living from paycheck to paycheck, you suddenly tell people to close their business. You suddenly tell people they can't go to work. I'm lucky. My career collapsed already last summer. But I have friends of mine who are in the speakers circuit. And of course, every event's been closed. Everything's canceled. They need these checks to pay their bills. I'm not talking about for luxury items. I'm not talking about for self-fulfillment. They need the money just to be able to get by day to day, paycheck to paycheck. And you close down everything because we just don't know? Okay. Has there been a death rate? There definitely has been a death rate. I've looked up the statistics. Almost everybody who died was over 60 or had a pre-existing health condition. Most of those numbers were over 80. Now, okay, I don't want anyone to think I'm being flippant. I'm over 60. I have diabetes and heart disease. I am what they call high risk. So, I have in my Daf Yomi 3 people who are in their 80s. And 1 stopped coming to the shir. The other 2 keep coming. Is I'm going to stop learning? Stop learning? a high risk. It affects elderly people worse. Now, to be fair, I say over 60. The highest percentage is over 80, a smaller percentage over 70, and an even smaller is over 60. Even smaller. Under 60, it's less than 0.5%. And I'll tell you something that's worse than this. I remember last year in the flu season, there were all these terrible stories of little kids dying. And this flu, for some reason, doesn't kill kids. It's almost zero under the age of 20. So every now and then they'll pull out a story. Oh, there was one person. Your odds are greater you're going to die when you get in your car and drive than that you're going to die from this. But did you hear everybody say we have to stop driving? Because look at the death rate. And by the way, I think a better argument can be made for not driving than to close down the entire world economy. So people who are at high risk, yes, they should watch themselves. Absolutely. But every year there's a flu. What happened now? Not only that, but the death rate has been highly exaggerated. Why? Because they say of the coronavirus cases, this is the percentage that dies. But they don't have enough tests to test people. And as they test more and more people, the death rate keeps going down. You know why? There's a lot of people who have coronavirus, and they either don't have any symptoms or the symptoms are mild enough that they, thank God, don't have to go to the hospital. So in England, they revised the study. They say it's going to be less than 1% overall. I'm not minimizing that. But do you understand what you're doing when you throw everybody out of work? When you tell all of Klal Yisrael they can't daven, they can't learn, they can't this. So if you're high risk, 100%, you should definitely be responsible and self-quarantine, and there's no question about it. And if you're not, go to work, go to school, do what you do. So they say, yeah, but what happens if these people then go to the elderly people? Yeah. So here's an idea. Don't go. When I was younger, if you weren't feeling well, they said, stay away from grandpa. You're not feeling well. You don't want to get him sick. They say the same thing about little kids. So keep them away from the baby. You'll get them sick. Sometimes you get sick. You lie in bed, take aspirin, drink plenty of fluids. Yeah, have a hot tea. And do what I do when I get sick. Yeah, moan and complain pitifully. Honey, I'm feeling well. Can I get you anything? No, I just, I'm so cold inside. You want another blanket? No, I just, that's what I do. That's what I do. So there's something happening. You got to understand. If the whole world does something, it's a Exaggeration and a shiurim. You know what World War I was? World War I is one of the most frightening tekufos of world history. It went on for years, and they didn't gain any ground. It was a big scar that went across France. The Germans were on one side, the French were on the other, and every now and then they would build up 1 million men on each side, and they'd smash into each other and kill a whole bunch of people, and then go back, and they wouldn't capture anything. This went on for years. I remember reading an analysis, and they said, based on the technology that existed at the time, there was no way to win World War I. So Edward Creasy wrote a famous book called The 15 Decisive Battles of World History. So somebody put out a book much later, not that many years ago, called The 100 Decisive Battles of World History. And he agrees that Sir Edwin Creasy's are probably the most important ones. But he's focusing on other battles. And one of them he focused on was World War I. Why? Because we never fought a war of attrition like that, where the goal was to fight a battle just to see how many people I can kill on the other side. So basically came World War I, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the entire world crazy, and everybody just smashed into each other, and it was the end. It was the end of the world. It was the end of the world as it existed for centuries. There was no more Malchus in Europe, right? There was the Tsar of Russia. There was the Kaiser in Germany, and there was the Emperor of Austria-Hungary. They were all wiped out after World War I. It becomes a laugh line now when you say there's a mashal. There was a king. Nobody even knows what that means anymore. Yeah, the monarchy. So there's something happens. It's Ratzon Hashem. Nothing happens for nothing. Yochanan Wasserman, during the Depression, wrote an amazing thing. He said, the money's still there. Nothing actually disappeared. The forest didn't burn down. The ships didn't sink. The money's there. It's just people stopped lending it because people don't trust each other anymore. There's a lack of trust. One of the things that fueled the Trump economy is that a lot of people trusted him as a businessman, that he was going to focus on business and focus on the economy. And so people trusted him, and they started investing again. Because he's a salesman, and he said, I want to do everything I can to help you build your business, and I want to help you, and I want to see you be successful. And a lot of people heard the message. And in England, they were using this projection from Imperial College, which they've now reworked the numbers, and it was 10 times as much as what could be expected. So what's the problem? The problem is that if everybody gets sick at the same time, there aren't enough ventilators, there aren't enough hospital beds. Granted. So therefore, the people who might need hospitalization, they should definitely self-quarantine, stay away from public places. Well, I've got police patrolling my neighborhood in case you go out for a walk, give you a 5,000 shekel fine. I have diabetes. My doctor told me I have to walk every day. The government says if you do, we're going to fine you because we're worried about your health. Guess what? So is my doctor. The whole world goes crazy. And the amazing thing is, and I said this word over, we go to shul Erev Rosh Hashanah Mincha. 10 minutes left to the year, 15 minutes left to the year. Yeah. We say, Bless this year for a good parnasa. There's 10 minutes left. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in one moment, can destroy the world economy. And you think that's something that can't happen. If you can destroy the entire world economy in one day, the Mistama, the Geula, can also come. We've spoken about this. The idea of matzah is, you know how long it'll take for the Geula to come? 18 minutes. Less than 18 minutes. The time it takes to make the matzahs. They baked their matzahs when they got there, kilo yechmatzu, because they did not become chametz. Until HaKadosh Baruch Hu saved them and redeemed them. How fast does it take? Incredible. Incredible. Kosh Baruch Hu can do anything. So, what can I tell you? It's not my place to second guess anybody. I'll tell you a story. There are many poskim who say you should not daven on a minyan on a plane. I remember I was learning with somebody. He also traveled a lot. And he says to me, do you daven with the minyan on the plane? And I said, yes, I do. He said, what do you mean? This posik said you shouldn't. That posik said you shouldn't. I said, you're right. When I see a group of Jews getting together to daven, I can't sit in my seat. I just can't. He says, well, I wouldn't do it. He says to me, I wouldn't do it. I would sit there. I said, what if Chas v'Shalom you had to say Kaddish? I don't know, but I know the place could say not to. 6 months later, his father passed away. And we both ended up on the same flight. I davened mincha in the airport, but for whatever reason, he didn't get there on time or whatever. And he's standing there on the plane trying to get a minyan for mincha so he can say Kaddish. And I see him, and as you can imagine, I do a double take. And he says, don't say anything. You killed my father. I don't really think I did, but so, I can't tell anybody that, they said a quarter of the cases in Israel were caught in shul. But again, that's not my question. The question is, how many of those people ended up in the hospital on ventilators? Yeah. So, sometimes you catch the flu. Every year during the flu season, I meet people who got the flu. Nobody ever told me to lock myself in my house. And I can told you, I'm high risk. What's the cost in terms of humanity by canceling all of the schools? How many kids are not going to be able to say the Manish 10 others yet because they weren't in school to learn it? And parents can educate their kids at home. See how well that goes over. Play the Rebbe Alta Pesach tape. That'll help. But I don't think they use tapes anymore. I'm sorry about that. CDs. I'm starting to sound like Joe Biden. Go get the record player and crank up the old hi-fi. I remember I was saying to Edison, this is a great idea. But anyway, what can I tell you? It is what it is. It is what it is. I know somebody who went through some very, very difficult times. And whenever I ask him, how do you manage? He says, it is what it is. That's the Metzias. If anyone asks me, and like I said, nobody does. I just don't understand. Everything is a question of weighing costs. The whole reason that Gemaras create conflict is because the only way you can make a decision is with a conflict. I used to say when I was in NCSY, I had to choose a caterer. And I said, I don't mind making decisions. There are two caterers. One, his food is very good. He's inexpensive and he's reliable. The other guy, his food's not so good. He's more expensive and he's not reliable. Which one should I choose? Okay, that's not even a question. That's a fine decision. But I never got decisions like that. You have to weigh different factors in making a decision. So saving lives are important. I heard the point man of the Trump administration speaking, Dr. Fauci, I think his name is. And and somebody asked him, I said, so why don't the people who are elderly and at risk just, you know, isolate and let everybody else go on with their lives? And he basically said it's very hard to keep people really isolated. They'll come over and visit. They'll come over this will happen, that'll happen. That's not a terror to close down the entire world because people don't do it right. I remember there was the student struggle for Soviet Jewry when I was in high school. And they came up with this idea of adding a fourth matzah to the Seder, the matzah of hope for Russian Jews. I would argue that there's enough references to freedom in the Seder already that I don't have to add an extra matzah for the Russian Jews, the matzah of hope. Isn't that what every matzah is? Isn't that what every Seder is? Yeah. Now we're here. Next year we'll be in Israel. Now we're slaves. Next year we'll be free. So I asked this to somebody once about some new ritual that was being created. And I said, why? For what purpose? I said, isn't it covered by this and covered by this? He says, yeah, but people don't take those things seriously. So you're going to add more ritual and that'll make it more meaningful? I don't think so. I think it'll just end up with more of the same. Make the things we're doing already more meaningful. To close the whole world before Pesach? To clean my house with all the kids running around? A near impossible task? And now here in Eretz Yisrael, they're telling you can't even leave your house. Police are stopping you. Where are you going? How am I supposed to get a haircut before Yontif? How am I going to get my clothes to the dry cleaners? Doesn't matter. The most important thing is saving lives. But we're always taking risks. And if you're worried about that, get rid of all the cars. Because a lot more people die in car accidents. But Ella, what? You take a risk. Says in Mesilas Yesharim, yeah, what's called reasonable risk and what's called being a lunatic, hololus, crazy when it comes to these things. So he says, statistical. You make a statistical analysis. Not what could, maybe, might happen. That's the lashon of Mesilas Yesharim. Okay. Are there risks? Life is always filled with risks. What's the cost? What's the cost of closing down the whole world? I think as Rabbi Chanan said, it's because of a certain choseh emunah that we have in ourselves and maybe in everybody else. And I thought to myself, see everybody wearing the masks and locking themselves into their room. And I remember the last time that happened, it was during the Gulf War. Everybody had to lock themselves into a sealed room, and everybody had to have a mask. And I thought, what's the difference? Back then, there was an external enemy shooting missiles at us, and now we have to be afraid of our friends and neighbors and family. Now we're the ones who are attacking ourselves. And so, where's the bidud in the Torah? By a mitzvah. We kick him out, send him outside of the camp. So, if you're looking for something practical to work on, there's something practical to work on. Something practical to work on is how we speak, what we say. Yeah. So those are some ideas for us to work on. And this has been the special coronavirus edition of the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, really, sir. Thank you. Thank you. You're too kind. But what can I tell you? You're lucky that I even got dressed for this, hanging around the house. I put on a shirt and a tie, a jacket. Otherwise, I'm wearing my pajamas. But no, I'm just kidding. But gosh, this is a way to go into Pesach. Nisan, Chodesh Nisan is Chodesh Nisim. It's brought down in the Svarim. The month of miracles. Before you tell Kodesh Baruch Hu how big your problems are, tell your problems how big a Kodesh Baruch Hu is. This is for sure Gezerim and Shemayim. Everywhere around the world. And what we really have to do is we have to look inside of ourselves. That's the idea of his Bodadus. His Bodadus is always to have time for yourself to think and to consider. And isn't that what Pesach cleaning is all about? Going through everything and deciding what do you need and what do you not need. What belongs in my home and what doesn't belong in my home. So, we have to daven. We have to daven. Kavi Hashem. And, I don't know at what point the nations of the world say, Genug, because you just can't keep us locked up forever. So they say, okay, well, we'll wait till we find a vaccine. Yeah, about 18 months. So you're going to close down the whole world for almost 2 years? Does that make any sense? Anyway, like I say, I'm not qualified to speak on this topic, or really almost anything. But if you've been watching this podcast, and you know that I'm not shy to share my thoughts. What's the nafkamina? I don't know if there is a nafkamina. I don't know. What am I going to tell you to do? Violate the law? You go around and you see on Mirpasot these weddings taking place. I was passing down the street. I saw a group of people standing so they could watch the chuppah that was up on a Mirpasot. They were out on the street so they could see it because there weren't enough people allowed there. I had to go to the post office today. One of the places still open, and everybody has to be like 6 feet away. So the line to get in the post office went all the way down the street. And what's with the toilet paper? I don't know. Is there something about this virus that attacks toilet paper? And eggs? I can't get eggs now. I don't know what it is in Israel. They're rationing the eggs. Something about the chickens? They keep them cooped up anyway. That's why it's called the chicken coop. Cooped up. Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand. I've been assured there's plenty of food. I see these ads for these Pesach supermarkets, but nobody can go. I don't know. Somebody's crazy. Maybe it's me. Yeah, I'm willing to recognize it. Someone pointed out there's a theory you're supposed to cough into your elbow, not into your hand. And you're not supposed to shake hands, you're supposed to bump elbows, but that's where I just sneezed, so that doesn't make any sense. I don't know. Kavel Hashem. You never go wrong davening. Never go wrong. And Kodesh Baruch Hu should, mamish in this month of Cherus, free us from our homes. Let us once again walk abroad in the streets. Odi Shama Ba'ore Yehuda Uvachutzas Yerushalayim Kol Sasan V'Kol Simcha Kol Chasan V'Kol Kala. They won't have to be stuck out on a repressive with 3 people watching from the street. In Mitzvah Hashem, we should be Zaycha once again to be able to have a life, if not normal, at least to the usual level of abnormality to which we've grown accustomed. That's it for this week, and I'm not going to do my whole spiel because this is the special coronavirus thing. You should be happy I put on a tie. I was just going to sit here with like one of those, crazed looks in my eyes. And we're on lockdown. We can't get out. Anyway, that's the story. And I'm Dovid Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.